opinions expressed in the following program are not necessarily those of Shaw Cable Systems or of the station. Through our access policy, we provide the opportunity for community groups and individuals to express their points of view.
Welcome to the Fourth Line Hockey Show. I'm your host, Willie Plouffe. We're in Earls on Main. The show is on the road. I'm sitting with my winger, Greg Haasbeek. How's it going today, Beeks?
Very good. How about you, Willie?
You know, I'm loving life, enjoying things. Our show is rocking. We got, you know what, a great guest on today. We've always talked about, you know, Hockey Manitoba, developing hockey players. We got the head coach of the POE team on, a scout for Everett Silvertips. This guy's done quite a bit of things.
You know, not only was he a good hockey player growing up, had a little bit of a pro career there, but the guy knows his hockey. You know, one of the top coaches in Manitoba, one of the top guys who knows hockey. You know, been a scout, I think, for about 12 years now. We're going to ask him some questions. We're going to grill him pretty hard. We're going to get some good answers for him for all the parents out there. You know what your kid needs to do to go to the next level.
And you know, that is so true, because the program of excellence is the beginning for these guys to go to Western Hockey League. Most of these boys are drafted, not just by Everett, by a lot of other teams also. And you know what? This guy is alumni Mohawks. I have to give him a shout out. Dougie Sinclair is going to be coming on. He's coaching with Bartley, another alumni Mohawk player. It's pretty good. We've got a great show talking about, and I also want to talk a little bit about nutrition. And Dougie, you know, we have to mention, you know, Dougie was a heavyweight in hockey. He wasn't, could score, but you know what? He wasn't afraid of anything. I think, you know what, today is great to talk about what you need to do to get ready to make the next jump to the next level.
You know, once everybody sees Dougie, they'll understand what nutrition's all about. You can tell that the guy eats right, lives right.
You know what? We're going to make sure that this show talks about young players being ready to get ready for the next level. So when you're playing AA, the AAA, then to the programs offered by Hockey Manitoba, and then getting drafted. We'll talk about the draft. He's also drafted some really good players. One of the players played with my son, played with Tosh, who works for you guys, works for Royal. Austin Lutz, we had his mom on the show, you know, and we just broke off from having goaltenders, Haasbeek, and he's a goalie.
You know who else he helped draft?
Give it to me.
Seth Jones.
Seth Jones, and we saw him at the World Cup.
We all thought Seth Jones was Portland, but no, he started in Everett.
You know what? That would be great. We're going to hammer that. We're going to talk about that. So when we come back here, the Fourth Line Hockey Show, we're going to bring in Dougie Sinclair, head coach of the POE team from Hockey Manitoba, 12-year scout with Everett, you know, Allen Cup championship winner. He's played with some great players.
Manitoba Hockey Hall of Famer.
Manitoba Hockey Hall of Famer. You know what? Sinky, he's making me look bad. And you know what? He's even throwing me a shirt today to throw on. You know, I'm looking pretty good in this. You know, maybe
I was wondering why you're wearing that. It looked like you're about to go skiing. Pretty fuzzy.
I felt like I'm a UND guy, but you know what? Maybe Everett needs a guy like me. We'll have to cue him on that. When we come back, we're going to bring in Dougie Sinclair. We'll be right back at you.
Life is all about chances. Made, given, and taken. Chances missed. And chances that change everything. Chances to try, to fail, and then try again. Chances to grow. Chances to change. Chances to learn, teach, lead. Chances. It's all about what you do with them. Boys and Girls Clubs of Winnipeg. Donate. Check us out. Make the call.
Back here at Earls on Main, you know what? We want to thank Earls and Woody's group for taking care of the Fourth Line Hockey Show. They're always great to us. We're going to bring in our guest here, Dougie Sinclair. Let's bring that big beast in. Come on in, Dougie. Hey, Dougie, welcome to the Fourth Line Hockey Show.
Welcome, Doug.
Thanks, Greg. Grab a seat, Doug. Like, before we start out with all our guests, we always ask everybody, you know what, a little bit of their hockey. Dougie, tell us about Dougie Sinclair and what's Dougie doing now in the hockey world.
Well, I got my fingers in a few different pies. Primarily, my main thing right now in hockey is I'm a scout. I'm an area scout for the Everett Silvertips, so in the Western Hockey League, and I've been doing that this is my 12th season now. So I've been day one with the club. We had our 10th anniversary last year. We're into our 11th season, but I was also with the club the year before. We had a team going because we had to scout players and get things off the ground. So my 12th year of scouting. I'm also working for Hockey Manitoba, Hockey Canada a little bit. I teach some courses with Hockey Canada, Hockey Manitoba, certifying coaches. I'm a master course facilitator. As well, I'm into the coaching thing as well. I still coach. This year I'm with the Manitoba Under-16 team, the provincial program of excellence. which is ready to begin next week actually in Calgary, and head coach there, as well as I help the Winnipeg Thrashers midget program out as well. So kind of doing a little bit of everything right now these days in hockey. So locally though, it's all local. So.
And Sinky, I'm going to call you Sinky because I can. Yeah. And it's been, you're very busy going, but can you give us, the audience out there, a rundown about the Program of Excellence? If you want to try out, how does it work? You play AA, AAA, and then you get invited and everyone looks at you, right?
Yeah, it's a bit of a process. Like, things have changed over the last couple of years. It used to be, it always has been a tryout process, an invite process, where the very first camp is 136 players. And that hasn't changed through the years. The program hasn't been around that long. It's only 5 or 6 years, or 4 or 5 years with the under-16 program. It used to be the regional evaluators would get together and they gather lists of players in your region, respective regions, and then they'd have a camp with 136 players. This season is the first year they use scouts, so Hockey Manitoba got together a bit of a scouting staff, some coaches, myself included, got to see some of the players and put together a list of 136 players. And your first camp is in the spring. It's in this year in Winnipeg. It was at the Jonathan Taves Arena, and we had 8 teams. And we kind of mixed the players up, and from there, it's basically a process where you move forward based on how you perform in these camps. But as well, there's a little more body of work this time. It's pretty tough for some coaches who haven't seen the players in the past. Having scouts, if a kid has a poor camp with the 136, at least we know that maybe he had a poor camp with. Throughout the course of the year, his body of work, his season was pretty good, and maybe, we have to look at that a little further. And from there, we go to a top 40 camp, which is in the spring and around May. This year was in Portage la Prairie, and then we move forward to a summer camp, top 26 or 27 players in the province, and then from that point forward, usually by the end of October, end of September, we pick our team of 20 players and then play in a Western Canada tournament sponsored by the Western Hockey League. So. It is a process, and moving forward, and it's it's quite exciting for the players. But these are the best kids in their age group within the province. So,
you brought up a very good point there. Some of these kids, if you do have a bad tournament, it's not the end, right? You still have an opportunity to get on and you'll get looked at. Yeah.
That's with anything in hockey. You don't know. It's not a make it or break it one time or one tournament or one game event. Nowadays with scouting in our league. In the Western Hockey League, we have a bantam draft, and if you get drafted or listed in our league, your scouts are usually your area scouts and your head scout, general managers. Sometimes they're keeping tabs on the players. So again, it's a body of work where we're watching the players, throughout the course of the year, and we watch them grow. And this tournament's a pretty important tournament for players in terms of them trying to impress their staffs, because the under-16 tournament in Calgary. All the GMs and head scouts are there, so it's kind of the brass of the Western Hockey League watching their prospects, the best against the best, and it's they get a good gauge. You play 4 games in 4 days, so it's you do get a good gauge, and if you're feeling a little bit off or whatever, it's sometimes it could have a little effect, but at the end of the day, if you have a bad tournament, it's not the end of it, right? So if you have a good tournament, it's going to help for sure, though, right? So
Beeks, you got to show up at that time. I think like Dougie's saying, it's not the end, but that's the time to answer the bell.
Well, I think a lot of parents out there are going to be really happy listening to Doug there. Not only did Doug explain it extremely well, extremely articulate, but I don't think parents sometimes understand how kids get picked. It's not a science. It's impossible to do science. You can't put the guy at the red line and do an NHL circle, see what the fastest skater is, because we don't measure hockey in seconds. We measure hockey in goals and assists. We sometimes measure hockey in stopping goals and assists. But you said it's a process. It's just not one weekend. It's a long process. And that's whether we're talking the first time your kid is trying out for AA at 11 or AAA at 13. Those coaches aren't just using that thing. They're using the past year. They're talking to the coaches. I know this is not perfect, but nothing is when you're talking evaluation like this. But I think you put it awesome so that these parents can understand. It's not that easy either, is it?
No, again, we're well aware of the fact that kids are going to have a bad camp. Even, when we run our Western League training camps, we have rookie camps or we'll have a main camp, and sometimes guys turn their poor performance there, right? It's when it becomes a trend where it's consistent, and that's the name of the game, really. It's consistency, and from a scouting perspective, we always watch. That's one thing we look at is, is this guy consistent? Does he play well on a game-to-game basis? And most times, if it is a consistent thing, then we go, this guy might be ready, right? But there's times where, the one good game every 4 or 5 games, it doesn't cut it normally. And just kind of touching what you said, it's not always about the stats either. You just don't look at a stat sheet and say, hey, this guy led this team in this league in scoring, and he's a shoo-in. There's other factors. I mean, obviously, we pay attention to that stuff, but there's a lot of valuable players that play in these programs that they fit a role, and they're not necessarily the best scorer, or maybe the top defenseman or the top goaltender, even for that matter, statistically. But they offer something. They have something that they offer, right? Another variable within a roster, right? So it's all about building a team and a program. And the camps are important. For sure, we do put stock in some of the camps, for sure.
So Doug, you picked 5, 6, 10 teams in your life. There's always those, first 5 kids that they made the team. Like, there's the standouts. Not just stats, like you said. The guy could be the best penalty killer in the world, never get a point. But he's a standout, he's made the team. But would you say that, the final 5 spots, it's out of 10 guys and it could be a coin toss?
Yeah, it all depends on what you have that year. Like, it goes from year to year, especially in our business with scouting. Like, we do everything based on a year, right? So this year the 98s are the team that are playing, the kids that are playing. Right. The 98s in Manitoba are actually a fairly strong group with the forwards, and the D aren't bad, but the goaltenders and forwards are particularly strong. I think the D have kind of all been the same the last few years, but in regards to the forwards, they're really strong. And yeah, I mean, there's probably 14 kids that can play on our team any day. And the unfortunate part is we can only take 12, right? So there's 14 or 15 that we know that these 3 or 4 guys that are getting released can step in and play and do well and perform. So,
and not only is the child going to be upset, unfortunately parents are upset.
Well, I always say this to players who get released from programs, especially when we get to this level now, to the under 16 program, and we talk to kids. That's one of the toughest things about coaching. Running these programs, you have to release good players, and that's the bottom line. And some kids use it for motivation, some don't. But at the end of the day, the kids who are upset, I always say to those kids that I'd be worried if you weren't upset. That means you don't care, right?
Great point.
But if you are a little bit upset that you're released, then that means you care. And if you want to prove a point to us that maybe we released the wrong guy, then that's a good thing. Maybe that lights a fire or whatever. But at the end of the day, we know in the program like this, under 16s, that there's going to be development from kids later on. There'll be kids that are released from these programs and these teams that go on to the Western Hockey League that have a great career in the Western League, that move on to the NHL. And you hear it all the time. Guys like Shea Weber was not even drafted in the Western Hockey League. The list goes on and on. I can name player after player. Brendan Shinneman, right here from Manitoba, led the Western Hockey League in scoring a couple of years ago. Wasn't drafted. Was a list by Tri-Cities, a good list. And these things are happening. Like Plouffe said, it's not a perfect science. So things happen. Players progress at different rates, develop at different rates. So.
You always see it in pro sports when a guy gets traded and he's playing his old team the next time. He wants to prove a point. You shouldn't have traded me.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about the sport. No one wants to get traded. I mean, I shouldn't say that. Players sometimes want to get traded, but it's not an easy part of the business. People think, they seem to think that it's we could just trade a guy and it's going to be an easy thing, right? I was thinking about that on the way over. When a team's struggling, we're just going to trade this guy, and fans start to, why aren't we trading this guy? Why aren't we bringing these guys in? It's, the GM's got a tough job. It's not an easy business. Like, there's more to it than just what you see on the ice. So, but yes, just get back to what you're saying. It's, you're trying to, when you try to shake things up and bring guys in, it's, there's more to it. It's all about building chemistry and, building a team, right? So.
Doug, that is such great information for the parents out there, all about Hockey Manitoba. We're going to break off now for a commercial, and when we come back...
Willie, what's the Culligan tip of the week?
I know, I'm going to come back to the Culligan tip of the week. The Culligan tip of the week is one of the best ones ever. You know what? If you're a tough guy in hockey, make sure you know who you're fighting so you can watch the video and you can, give him a couple. When we come back, we're going to talk with Sinky here all about Everett, the Western Hockey League, what young bucks need to do to get ready to go to Everett. We'll break off and be right back at you.
Pants, pants, pants. I am folding the pants. The pants are long. Do they go on my head? Do they? Do the pants go on my head? No. They go on
Everyday moments can become teaching moments because learning starts long before school does. Give your child the start they need at bornlearning.org.
Fourth Line Hockey Show back at you. Dougie Sinclair. This kid can be my winger all the time because I know he's got my back. Beeks, off air we talked about being cut from different teams. You got a great story from Stevie Y.
This is pretty well the best story I've ever heard in hockey. And it really goes to every parent out there and really talks about what hockey is all about no matter what level. So we all watched Team Canada win the 2010 Winter Olympics. I happened to be lucky enough to go to that game, one of the best experiences of my life. But I heard this story. Steve Yzerman, the general manager of that team, the night before their first game, had to bring all the players' parents together, took them out for dinner. And he had a parents' meeting. And he's talking about to the parents exactly, I think, how 11 AA coach talks to the parents. Your kid was a superstar or is a superstar. These are NHLers. These aren't NHLers. These are the best of the best. We've got Sidney Crosby at 20. We've got Jerome McGinley at 32 at that time.
JT.
And a parents' meeting. We had, of course, Jonathan Toews, the guy who won the best forward of that whole tournament.
Yeah.
The best player in the world at that time. But Steve Yzerman had to bring the parents together and talk them. Some of your kids aren't going to play that much. Some of your kids are actually going to sit the bench. We have 18 forwards. Or no, they had 14 forwards. They're only dressing 12. 2 guys weren't playing, or they're playing backup minor roles. Bergeron only went out there for face-offs. His parents might have been pissed off. But he talked to them, and he said, no matter what, you got to support your kids. This is for Canada. This isn't, you got to be unselfish now. And don't fight for your kid. Even though all of us parents, I'm not a parent, but we do fight for our kids. We want our kids to have the best. But can you imagine at that level, he still had to motivate the parents to treat their kids the right way for Team Canada, not the right way for their family.
Man,
unbelievable, isn't it? You probably have to go through it.
Dougie, all those players are competitive, and so are mom and dad too. It's a hard hit.
Yeah, I'm just trying to process that. I'm thinking it's more maybe. I really don't think there's a ton of parent involvement when it comes to the National Hockey League, but I would think at that particular an event like that, maybe because they're all superstars coming together and from different teams, the parents are going to come to watch the tournament. Maybe they'll have an effect on, hey, just
that's what I heard.
Calm them down more than
you're going to go out for dinner
right.
with your son during this tournament,
right.
And you know what? Be supportive, even if your son's not playing. You have to think of the goal of Team Canada, not your family. Because during an NHL season, you're not traveling with the team, but at a tournament like that, you're going to probably see your dad every night.
I definitely know one thing.
Especially off games.
If any of my kids are going to NHL, I'm traveling with the team. So get ready out there, guys. I'm going to be traveling.
Well, and it's a good point, but I think there's because they'll have a little bit of downtime with the parents, and it's probably an effect where they're, hey, let's calm these guys down. We want to make sure everyone's focused, and hey, you know what, son, or and at the end of the day, the parents are still the players' biggest support network. So
for sure.
It's probably a pretty good strategy. Let's do it this way, and everyone's got to be on the same page. And pretty smart. They want a gold medal, right? So
I think a lot of these professional athletes, how much their parents had to give up for them to become professional athletes. It seems like their dad is sometimes their best friend.
Yeah, you know what? You see kind of
the other side too.
Both sides of the spectrum. You hear stories like a guy like Patrick Kane, who, and I don't know if this is a true story or whatever, but I know that the dad was keeping tabs on what it cost him to play. I know he's from Buffalo, and he did a lot of traveling and playing on all these programs and playing a lot of hockey during the course of the season. I think it cost him $120,000 by the time he got to midget hockey, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was in junior at 16, but it was a lot of money for them being from Buffalo to go to Canada and go to some of these programs in different areas of the U.S. So they were keeping track, apparently.
His dad probably tipped cab drivers, though.
That's funny. And for me, when I was playing hockey AAA, I was pretty lucky. My dad knew the owner of a sports shop, so I always got a pretty good deal. It was always working good. We're going to talk a little bit with Sinky here about being a scout for Everett. He's been there now 12 years, going 12 years. Dougie, what happens as a scout? What do you do for a scout? Are you on the road a lot?
I am. I get the opportunity to travel, which I really enjoy. As a matter of fact, sounds kind of corny. I actually don't mind getting in the car and throwing on some road miles, but through with our team and just the way the province of Manitoba is structured, like I will do some traveling. I'll get out to BC and Alberta, see their POE programs, see their best players. I used to be in Saskatchewan a lot more. But just with Manitoba, we used to have a lot of small towns, so there would be one kid, like a guy like Reed Gow, I don't know why I'm bringing up that name, but Reed Gow was going through. I just remember him playing in Killarney, and he was like the guy who played like 55 minutes a game because they had 9 or 10 players, right? So now it's changed in Manitoba with the regional teams, so I do a little less travel to some of the smaller tournaments and towns, but I'm on the road. A lot comes through Winnipeg, like Winnipeg's a big center, Brandon. Those are the 2 places I seem to be in the most, but I do throw in some road miles. I do like it. Get in the car, it's relaxing for me. Just kind of think about some things.
Dougie, I know you're a big movie buff. You love movies.
Slapshot being number
no,
one.
No. I think. How about Trouble with the Curve? You've seen it?
I did. Yeah, I did see that actually.
Do you consider yourself a Clint Eastwood type scout, or?
Well, I don't know. He's a big league scout, and he's been there a long time.
The old school, versus. Yeah. But you said, I remember when he went up to the Braves office there and that young buck's going, oh, no, we have computer programs that do this all now. And he goes, no. It's about the hearing and the sight.
I do agree with that. I do, for me personally, we do look at the stats, obviously, and we're identifying guys. But, you go, for me, I don't really watch a lot. I don't look at a lot of stat sheets before I go into a game. My first look at kids, I'm a big first impression guy. I don't want to give away, the way we do things or how we do it in Everett, but we're pretty tight-lipped about things. Exactly. But at the end of the day, I like to get first impressions for me are big, and we don't like announcing even to our prospects when we're coming to a game. So we want to see guys perform when they know we're not going to be there. And for us, we just see some of these kids, and it's more of a, there's a kid who might be a great player who doesn't show up on the stat sheet every night. And you're going hey, this guy's a great defender. Mark Stahl is a good example. Guy plays 30 minutes a night and ends up at the end of the season with 10 points, but he's always playing against the top lines. He's killing penalties. He's always a plus player. And that's a tough gig every night, and it doesn't always show in the stat sheets. So.
I heard a real crazy one from another Western League scout that when he goes to watch some kids, if they have a knob at the end of their stick that's like Ryan Smith, like that big knob, says kid's not getting a good scouting report. Something stupid like that. Do you have any things where in your mind, you're kind of going, I don't like this?
I don't have any of those type of quirks. I don't. I'm just big on.
You're pretty objective.
Yeah, but I am big on first impressions, and usually your gut's right about things, and it's not always right. I think Willie said earlier, it's not an exact science, and we look at there's certain variables. Obviously, we know kids are going to change. Again, there'll be guys that get drafted that don't play. There'll be kids that don't get drafted that play in it. I think more so at our level than at the NHL level. Where they're down to 7 rounds now. We're still looking at 12 rounds of players here. So.
Doug, we only got a couple minutes left in the segment. Let's ask him some questions about the man here.
Okay, you know what? Let's Dougie. The team you played for in the Allen Cup, the Allen Cup is a big thing for senior hockey players. There's some great pros out there. You guys won the Allen Cup one year, didn't you?
Yeah, that was fun. We a lot of guys played pro. We had some NHL players, some minor pro players, some European guys, and it was a good time. We had guys like Pat Falloon and Jamie Leach, Kelly Glow. These guys had pretty good hockey careers. At the end of the day, guys were just kind of playing for fun at that point. Playing to win a national championship. We were the first team in Manitoba, 39 years to win the Allen Cup. So, when you start getting out east or out west into BC, you realize how big it is, and it's.
In Alberta,
Alberta as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So the tournament when we won it was in Hamilton or Dundas, and it's a pretty big deal. They got a league, and it's a lot of these pros. They come home and they play it for their hometown or their local areas, and it's pretty good hockey when you get to the Final Four. A lot of guys would know a lot of the players that play in the tournaments, but it's a great time.
And everybody, don't let Dougie be so modest. We talked about these guys who have pro careers. Doug played pro hockey, and he was a pretty awesome hockey player in his day.
And you know what, Sinky? And I'll also got to say, Sinky, and you're one of the toughest cats I met. But Dougie, that team got inducted to the Hall of Fame recently, right? And what squad was that?
That was the Hildesheim North Stars, and we got inducted about 2 weeks ago, which is great. We were talking about that induction, and there was a team from 1951 Monarchs that won the Memorial Cup that got inducted the same night as us. And some of those guys were 80 years old, and we were talking amongst ourselves as teammates. We're going, for us to get inducted 10 years after we won the Allen Cup, first team in 49 years, it's an honor, obviously, and for us to get inducted that quickly, we were going, hey, we're still young enough where everyone's here to do it. Some of those guys that got inducted from the Monarchs, there was only like 5 or 6 of those guys, alive to come in and, get that honor. So we were extremely honored. And
well, that's pretty awesome, Doug. I got a handshake again. I'm proud of you, buddy.
Sinky, before we break off, and thank you for being on the show, give the kids out there one thing that they can look forward to or be positive to keep on rolling.
For me, it comes down to work ethic. I think I love kids who compete hard, whether you're a goaltender or a defenseman, and being the guy who competes hard is the guy who just works hard every night, gets after it, getting on pucks, first to pucks, or just being that guy who wants to win and give his teammates a lift or do whatever you need to do. But the compete part, and you can tell the guys who are working hard, trying hard. I think work ethic and compete are the 2 biggest things I look for.
Kind of like all 3 of us when we were kids.
Exactly. Sinky, thank you for coming on the Fourth Line Hockey Show. You know what? We'll come back here after, shut it down, talk about what's going on next week. We'll be right back at you.
These are the faces you want to meet. These are the friends you live for. These are the times when we reminisce and we get together and we do our best. Let's live the good times now. 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 We live for tomorrow, we live for today.
Live right. Learn how.
Okay, it's your first day, and you need to know that nearly 1/4 of all workplace injuries are hand injuries. So watch your fingers.
Safe workers aren't born, they're trained. That's why there's safe work.
Okay, there's a lot to do today, but we're going to start you off simple because it's your first day. Change all the burned out light bulbs, okay? And be careful.
Safe workers aren't born, they're trained. That's why there's safe work.
You don't need a media monkey to make healthy choices. Think for yourself. A message from Concerned Children's Advertisers.
Back here at Earl's, Dougie Sinclair, a great guest. We brought him back because he was leaving Beeks, and you know what? I know Sinky for a long time. And
what do you want to talk about? Your favorite subject.
Yeah, I like talking about hockey fights. We don't promote them. We always badger back and forth. But with having Sinky here, I need one of his stories, and one of his stories is the NHL camp. I dragged him back from the parking lot. Dougie, give it to us.
Well, just to start, the hockey fight thing now, I'm glad the game's cleaned up. But back in the day, it was a little more prominent. But I went to my first pro camp, and it was New York, the Rangers. And in those days, there was probably 8 or 9 fights a game, and it was a rookie portion of the camp, and lots of guys were fighting, trying to earn a spot. There's a lot of heavyweights there, like the Mark Janssens and Dennis Vials and Troy Mollet's, and Reed Simpson was there before he was drafted. Those kind of guys, for those who remember those names. But anyways, I was playing online with a guy named Jeff Bennick. I'll never forget this guy. He was from Windsor. He played with Adam Graves, and their team just went to the Memorial Cup. And Benny and I were line mates through most of the camp. And I don't know, somehow I got an altercation with a guy, and we squared off in the corner. And I wasn't a guy who liked to lunge in and go right away. I like to always kind of sit back and let a guy make his move. But
make his mistake, Dougie.
I don't know, but whatever. At that particular time, I kind of waited, and this guy, him and I were just kind of standing there dancing around a little bit. All of a sudden, I get pushed out of the way, get bumped out of the way, and it was Benny. He pushed me out of the way, and he fights this guy, and I said, "What's going on?" I go back to the bench. Benny comes to the bench a little bit later, and I said, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "You're taking way too long, Sinky. You got to get out of there." So the guys were fighting guys to fight back in those days, but I don't know if I really like telling that story, but it was.
Well, you know what? We brought it back here. We had to have it. Sinky, we love him having on the show.
It's been a great time. That was the time. You said it off the air too. The only place for fighting now is in the professional level. It's not. It definitely shouldn't be in minor. Maybe in junior a little bit. The professional level is the only where it's even close to acceptable.
We always have.
But it was way different when we were kids.
Way different. You know what? We grew up watching a lot of hockey fights. Like, man, in the Keene Classic, I had Paul Coffey on my team, and we're talking a little bit about, Montreal and Quebec fighting. He said, "What about the Battle of Alberta? Those are huge brawls." We're not promoting fighting hockey and Fourth Line Hockey Show. We just talk about our opinions in that. We want to thank Earls on Main for having us down here. We want to thank Dougie Sinclair again for coming on down. You know what? We'll catch you guys next week. Tune in next week.
The opinions expressed on the program you have just watched are not necessarily those of Shaw Cable Systems or of this station. Through our access policy, we provide the opportunity for community groups and individuals to express their points of view.